Ahoy hoy, this is Black Gold. This video is about the original Super Dimension Fortress Macross theatrical film Do You Remember Love, which was released in Japan in 1984. I also have another video that focuses on the TV series version of the story, because the movie version and the TV series can basically be seen as two parallel timelines, even though they share a very similar world setting. The plot and even some core concepts are quite different. That's why I need two separate videos to explain them properly. And to avoid repeating myself, some parts in this video will be explained based on the assumption that you already have a general understanding of the TV series. If you've only watched Robotech, the Macross saga, some of the things coming up might feel confusing to you. And even if you have seen the 1980s English release, Clash of the Bionoids, I'm pretty sure that there will be many scenes here that you don't remember or don't know at all. That's because Clash of the Bionoids removed a lot of important footage. Once you see what was cut, you'll probably understand why those scenes didn't make it in. So I'd recommend watching my video that explains the TV series in detail first, and then coming back to this one about the movie version. Also, because of different naming conventions, I'll be using the Robotech names here, Rick, Lisa, and Roy, instead of Hikaru, Misa, and Foka. The movie opens with a short block of text, briefly explaining that the massive space migration ship, the Macross, was holding its space launch ceremony in February 2009, when it was suddenly attacked by a mysterious alien fleet causing devastating destruction to Earth. The Macross, carrying over 50,000 people, uses a space-fold jump, which means a warp, to escape to Pluto orbit, and then begins a long journey slowly flying back towards Earth. A quick side note here, the distance between Pluto and Earth is actually extremely far in the real world. In case you're not familiar with the scale, if Earth were the size of a blueberry, let's say about 1.5 centimeters across, the Pluto would be about the size of a sesame seed, and the distance between them would be roughly 7.5 kilometers or about 4.7 miles. The story begins 6 months after the Macross has started its return journey. By this point, a temporary city has already been built inside the ship. Rick, who works as a fighter pilot, is nothing more than a fan of the popular singer Minmei. Minmei doesn't even know who he is. Right from the start, the visuals and overall tone of the movie are already very different from the TV series. Not only is the animation more detailed, the bridge operations feel more professional, and the fighter designs are different, but the movie also skips over the early episodes about how the Macross left Earth. In the TV series, Rick is a stunt pilot who accidentally ends up flying a Valkyrie and fighting the Zentraedi. Minmei is just an ordinary girl and only gradually becomes a pop idol as the story progresses. But in the movie, within the first few minutes, we already get a clear look at the Zentraedi commander and his staff. And honestly, they look very alien. During one of Minmei's concerts, the Macross comes under attack again. Rick, who is out on a space mission at the time, notices enemy forces approaching the ship, breaking formation, and rushes back to help. As a result, he gets scolded harshly by his superior officer, Lisa. When Rick realizes that enemies has infiltrated the interior of the Macross, he once again disobeys orders and rushes back inside to deal with them. During the chaos, the shelter where Minmei is hiding gets destroyed. While trying to escape, she gets separated from Kyle and ends up alone. Because the gravity system in that area malfunctions, Minmei is blown away by powerful air currents. Luckily, Rick arrives just in time to save her. However, the two of them fall into the engine section of the ship and completely lose contact with the outside world. They are trapped together for 3 days and nights, during which they get to know each other better. Here is a very scene that will inevitably be cut. You guess what? Yeah, the Minmei shower moment, of course. And this one's more detailed compared with the TV version. In their dialogue, it's mentioned that The Macross is currently orbiting Saturn and will return to Earth in about a month. During those few days, they must have talked about many things, including Minmei's dream of becoming a singer and details about her family. Rick asks Minmei about some of the rumors surrounding her. Minmei laughs and says it's all just acting. She even suddenly teases Rick and starts rehearsing a scene with him right there on the spot. At that very moment, people outside finally locate them and the two are rescued. Because Rick saved the Macross' star idol, the higher-ups decide not to punish him for his earlier violations of military orders. Lisa, however, is clearly unhappy about this decision. Meanwhile, photos of Minmei kissing a fighter pilot end up on the front page of the newspapers, and Rick becomes the latest subject of tabloid gossip. Unlike the TV series, the movie version shows Rick and Minmei quickly developing a romantic relationship after this encounter. The two begin dating in secret and officially become a couple. Minmei confesses that she is starting to feel tired of her idol career. Trying to cheer her up, Rick recklessly steals a training aircraft. Dozer, the commander-in-chief, orders the capture of the Myclons, which means the humans, hoping to study them and uncover the secret of Proto-culture. At this moment, a Meltrandi battleship appears nearby. In the movie version, the Zentraedi society is split into two opposing factions: the all-male warrior race known as the Zentraedi, and the all-female warrior race known as the Meltrandi. The Zentraedi track Rick's stolen training craft to Saturn's rings. At the same time, Lisa is pursuing Rick together with Minmei's brother, Kyle. Yes, in the movie version, Kyle is her brother instead of cousin. When Lisa detects enemy units nearby, she urgently calls Major Roy Fokker in for backup. Unfortunately, all of them end up being captured. This is another major difference from the TV series. In the TV version, the ones captured are Rick, Lisa, and Ben. But in the movie, it is Rick, Lisa, Minmei, Kyle, and Roy, 5 people in total. As for why this change was made, I'll get to that later. Aboard the Zentraedi flagship, the frontline commander Britai and his advisor Exodor interrogate the prisoners. In the Japanese version of the film, about half of the Zentraedi dialogue is spoken in an alien language. Even Japanese audiences need subtitles to understand it. But in the English version, the Hong Kong Cantonese dub and most other localized releases, all of that is simply translated into the local language.
I want you to obtain some samples. What does he want with samples?
He is the commander. He must have a plan.
In the TV series, the Zentraedi and Meltrandi have a relationship more like a main force and a monitoring force, and ordinary soldiers rarely interact. In the movie version, however, their relationship is far worse. They are sworn enemies. Because both races reproduce through cloning, Dozer and its officers have no understanding of what human reproduction actually means. Roy immediately demonstrates by hugging someone and even prepares to demonstrate the next step. And Kyle, not waiting Roy to take advantage of his sister Minmei, jumps in first and kisses Minmei himself. The Zentraedi are instantly horrified by the sight of a man and a woman kissing. They freeze on the spot, refuse to look any further, and quickly escort the prisoners to their cells. At the very moment, the Meltrandi launch a surprise attack, throwing the Zentraedi fleet into complete chaos. Roy, Rick, and Lisa seized the opportunity to escape and managed to board their fighters. However, they soon run into pursuing Zentraedi soldiers. In a moment of panic, Rick has no choice but kisses Lisa, successfully shocking the enemy into retreat, but earning himself a solid slap from Lisa in return. Then the Meltrandi ace pilot, Melia, arrives on the battlefield. None of the Zentraedi soldiers can stand up to her. The combat here is far more brutal than in the TV series, and unsurprisingly, these scenes were heavily cut in many releases at the time. After Melia leaves, Rick and the others attempt to escape once more, but suddenly a Zentraedi soldier appears out of nowhere. You might not realize it, but this random guy is actually Chiron. Yeah, the second villain in TV version becomes a nobody in the movie. What a pity. He ambushes Roy, cripples his fighter, and leaves Roy gravely wounded, preparing to deliver the final blow. Seizing his last chance, Roy launches a suicide attack, taking Chiron down with him. He dies a hero, giving Rick and Lisa the chance to escape. Compared to the TV series, where Max rescues the team in a rather forced way, and Roy later dies after being hit by stray fire in a routine battle, I personally find the movie version is far more powerful and emotional. Here, Roy knowingly sacrifices himself to save his comrades. It's much more tragic and much more heroic. Just as Rick locates Minmei and prepares to rescue her, the Zentraedi activate the space vault, a warp jump. Caught in an explosion and distorted by the space vault effect, Rick and Lisa not only fail to save Minmei, but are also transported to a barren, desolate planet. After a brief argument, Rick and Lisa soon realize the truth. The planet they are standing on is none other than Earth itself, completely destroyed. They fly across the globe to investigate, but find no trace of humanity. Human civilization has essentially been wiped out, leaving behind only a handful of mutated life forms. Rick takes care of Lisa when she falls ill, comforting her and staying by her side. A few days later, they discover a mysterious giant tower rising from the ocean and decide to investigate. Inside, they find the ruins of an ancient alien civilization. Through the alien computer system, Lisa uncovers the history of proto-culture. 500,000 years ago, proto-culture mastered asexual reproduction through genetic engineering, creating male and female beings that could reproduce without mating. The Zentraedi and the Meltrandi. Over time, however, the two races drifted apart and gradually became giant warriors who knew only combat and endless slaughter. Realizing their mistake, proto-culture sought to rebuild a world where males and females could coexist. They arrived on Earth and used their advanced technology to genetically modify Earth's native life forms, creating a new form of life based on sexual reproduction. This was the origin of human civilization. 20,000 years ago, the war between the two giant races spread into the solar system. The proto-culture living on Earth were forced to flee. Before leaving, they hid their cities beneath the ocean, hoping to one day return and live there again. Unfortunately, they never came back. 6 months ago, during the events described in the opening text of the movie, the Zentraedi's attack on Earth mistakenly triggered the ancient system, which interpreted the destruction as the return of its creators. As a result, the tower partially activated and rose to the surface. Now, due to Rick and Lisa's accidental interference, the entire city fully emerges from the ocean. A quick side note here. In the original Japanese version, the computer system speaking to Lisa uses an alien language. In the English version, however, it speaks English and repeatedly says only a few short phrases.
Cease communication. Cease communication. Cease communication.
Rick doesn't understand any of it, but Lisa somehow comprehends far more than what it actually is spoken. Honestly, this part feels a bit awkward. Lisa attempts to send a distress signal to the Macross, but the computer shuts down immediately afterward. It's unclear whether the message was ever received. The two continue exploring the ruins. Lisa finds a fragment inside a residential building, engraved with alien text, but is unable to decipher it for now. Meanwhile, another fragment, one that records a melody, is already in Dozer's possession. Rick and Lisa spent an entire month on Earth together. In their downtime, they played a bit of a married couple, and over this period, their relationship gradually deepens. I even suspect that they may have already engaged in some much deeper proto-culture activities. 1 month later, the Macross finally returns to Earth, having received the signal, and rescues them. They report Earth's condition to Captain Glovo, and also deliver the tragic news of Major Roy Foker's death to Claudia. Back to space, the Meltrandi arrives at Earth via spacefold. Their goal is to seize Proto-culture and turn it into a weapon. In this battle, Ben is shot down before the fight even properly begins. Max engages Melia in combat and pursues her all the way back to the Meltrandi mothership, where the two engage in an intense close-quarters duel. Just like in the TV series, Max clearly outmatches Melia in combat ability. And personally, I find the fight scenes here extremely well done. Suddenly, the communicators on both sides begin broadcasting Minmei's voice. It turns out that the Zentraedi have successfully deciphered the ancient melody left behind in Dozer's hand, or in his head or in his neck, and are now using Minmei's singing as a psychological weapon. The effect is immediate. Meltrandi soldiers lose their will to fight and are forced to retreat via spacefold. There's a small detail here that many viewers might miss. I'll come back to it later. Because Dozer only possesses the melody but not the lyrics, Minmei can only hum the tune. Its power is not enough to completely overwhelm the Meltrandi. Dozer is clearly displeased. Meanwhile, Captain Britai, who has grown increasingly fascinated by proto-culture and human civilization, secretly negotiates a ceasefire with humanity behind his commander's back. Not only does Britai send 3 soldiers to undergo microning and act as representatives, he also releases Minmei and allows her to return to the Macross. At the award ceremony, Minmei is of course happy to see Rick again, but she immediately senses the growing closeness between Rick and Lisa. The love triangle enters an awkward stalemate. At this moment, the Meltrandi Supreme Commander and her main fleet arrived at Earth, preparing for the final confrontation against both the Zentraedi and humanity. However, the Zentraedi possess superior firepower. With a single shot, they destroy the Meltrandi flagship and kill their commander. Dozer then intends to take this opportunity to completely wipe out the Meltrandi race. Back to the Macross, Minmei runs away, unable to accept Rick's shifting feelings. Lisa asks Rick to deliver the lyrics she deciphered from the alien ruins to Minmei, hoping she can sing the complete song and turn the tide of battle. After much effort, Rick finally finds Minmei, but Minmei, heartbroken and overwhelmed, refuses to sing. At the moment this critical, throwing a tantrum like this, Rick loses his temper and slaps her. I think you can guess why this scene was cut, right? Thankfully, Rick eventually manages to convince Minmei to sing, and what follows is one of the most iconic moments in the anime history. This song is the legendary movie theme Do You Remember Love? Ai oboete imasu ka? Britai and all Zentraedi, who had originally been ordered to eliminate the Meltrandi, are now hearing Minmei sing the completed song. Something deep within their genetic memory awakens. Britai, realizing that his commander intends to exterminate all women, including the Macross crew and the entire Meltrandi fleet, which would mean the total extinction of proto-culture. Britai makes a decisive choice. He defects on the spot. Britai immediately calls upon every Zentraedi and Meltrandi soldier who can hear Minmei's voice. From this moment on, they share a single enemy, Supreme Commander Doza, the one who seeks to erase their ancestral culture. Britai orders all forces to support the Macross and launch a full-scale assault on Doza's main fleet. Earlier, I mentioned the detail. Max was caught in a space fold together with the Meltrandi mothership. This development is almost the complete opposite of what happens in the TV series. During the movie's final battle, Max and Melia fight together, but Max is no longer piloting the Macross's VF-1 or Valkyrie. Instead, he is operating a Meltrandi combat mecha. Perhaps this handsome ace pilot has already conquered the hearts of all the Meltrandi warriors. Who knows, maybe he even taught them a few proto-culture activities. This genius pilot, through sheer combat skill, earns the Meltrandi's respect and is even allowed to grow a giant size, fighting alongside them as an equal on the battlefield. The movie never explains what ultimately happens to Max. In the TV series, he marries Melia, has a daughter, and even becomes a captain in later sequels. But those developments belong to a different timeline and have nothing to do with this parallel universe movie. As the Proto-culture song echoes across space, awakened Zentraedi and humanity strike back together. Many of the battle scenes here were heavily cut in various releases. Frankly, some of them don't need any explanation as to why. With support from Britai's defected fleet, the Macross charges straight into the enemy flagship. Rick leads the assault, pushing forward heroically. Empowered by Minmei's singing, he breaches the core of the flagship and delivers the final decisive blow. Doza, the ultimate boss, is annihilated in a single shot. As the flagship collapses, the Zentraedi main force disintegrates. Humanity and the awakened Zentraedi emerge victorious. Proto-culture is preserved. A galaxy-wide war finally comes to an end. But for Britai and his followers, their journey continues, searching the universe for their scattered brethren, guiding them back toward their ancestral civilization. At the very end of the story, Claudia asks Lisa, what kind of song could move an entire army like that? Lisa replies, it's nothing special, just a pop song. A song that was incredibly popular in an alien city hundreds of thousands of years ago. It was a perfectly ordinary love song. What makes Macross so unique? In anime made during the 1980s or even earlier, whenever a story involved space warfare, it was almost always about humans fighting aliens. Series like Voltron, Volts 5, or Mazinger Z are typical examples. Even in a few exceptions such as Gundam or Armored Trooper Votoms, where the conflict is mainly between humans, the battlefield is still dominated by overwhelmingly powerful protagonist machines or by humans with special abilities or extraordinary physical traits. Macross take a very different approach. In the story, even someone as talented as Max is still just an ordinary human being. Rick is the main character, but he is only one soldier among many on the battlefield. He has no special bloodline, no superpowers, and the VF-1 he pilots is simply a mass-produced unit, not a machine with overwhelming destructive power. On the battlefield, everyone is just an individual caught up in the flow of war. Each battle is shaped not by destiny or miracles, but by the decision these people make. Although the Zentraedi are a race of giants, technically they and humans share the same origin. In the movie version especially, the war between the Zentraedi and the Meltrandi feels like a projection of the relationship between human men and women. This idea is surprisingly elegant. The audience immediately understands that they are the same species, yet locked in endless conflict. Much like the constant tension and struggle between the two sexes in human society. In most stories, music is little more than background decoration. Macross, however, turns songs into symbols of civilization itself. Music can inspire courage, soften hearts, and is elevated to something essential to the story. Throughout human history, military music has been used to raise morale during war. Macross builds upon this idea by adding cultural impact, allowing an ordinary girl with no physical combat ability to become the key figure who turns the tide of war and even assimilates the enemy. In the Japanese version, all the songs are performed by Mari Ichima, who also voices Minmei herself. The song Do You Remember Love became her breakout hit at the time, and stands as a rare and successful example of a fictional idol becoming a real one. One last detail. There is something that doesn't appear in most translations and exists only in the Japanese version. I think everyone knows what proto-culture is, but in the movie there is another word that appears. Even you don't speak Japanese, I think you still can hear this line clearly exists as a counterpart to proto-culture, which is deculture. Both Zentraedi and Meltrandi use it occasionally as a catchphrase, and it later became a symbolic term among Macross fans. The word has no fixed translation. It's used to express shock, excitement, rejection, contempt, cursing, or sheer disbelief, something you just blurt out when emotions overwhelm you. I mean, yeah, turns out even aliens have swear words. That brings this video to an end. If you have any corrections or thoughts, I'd love to see them in the comment. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking, sharing, and leaving your comment on this movie. It really helps this new channel grow. I'm Blackout, see you in the next video. The Zentraedi and Meltrandi. The Zentraedi and Meltrandi. The Zentraedi and Meltrandi. The Zentraedi and Meltrandi.